Hello, hello, and welcome to the Final Four of Board Game Madness. I'm Mike Ganade, and we are going into the top four games of my personal collection. And we have the number 1 seed today, Everdell, going against the number 4 seed, Pandemic Legacy Season 0. So, obviously, at this point in the matchups, we're getting into super subjective territory. All of these games are excellent in the Final Four. It really comes down to my personal preferences. I'm going to do my best to walk through each category and let you know what I think really puts things over the edge and make a pick. But I love both of these games so much. And in today's matchup, we have sort of an interesting thing where we've got a competitive game, Everdell, where you're doing some worker placement and building your own little village, versus a cooperative game, and not only that, a cooperative legacy game. The only way you're playing cooperative with Everdell is if you get an expansion. So these games are about the same price. You know, they're both around the $80 mark, give or take. So let's jump right in and talk about production. Over on Everdell's side, I've got the collector's edition. So we've got some upgraded bits with metal coins, plastic resin, wooden logs. The components are very nice. You've got the nice cardboard Evertree that gives it some nice table presence. And that's, you know, otherwise you're just talking about cards and other tokens and things. The meeples obviously are wooden, but that's the main highlights of the components. And then over here with a legacy game, what you get is you get all those really nice components and that opening of the new boxes where new things are inside. And I really like all the plastic agents that you can put on the board, the vans, the plastic safe houses. Obviously all the stickers are fun to use, and I really absolutely love the passports in here. So let's go through and talk about some of the things that make up each of these productions. I've given you a quick overview of the components. I think from a component standpoint, I would give a slight edge to Legacy. Otherwise, I'd say it's pretty tied, but I give them like half-point advantage because they have all those boxes to open and that sort of creates some excitement. But if we're talking about illustrations, you know, Everdell has a lot of gorgeous illustrations like this front of this box, but all the cards have their critters on them and their structures, and they're all intricately sort of hand painted. They've got this beautiful artwork done for all of those cards. So the illustrations in Everdell are much stronger than Pandemic in my opinion. Pandemic has some great graphic design and art direction, but even the cards with some artwork on it, they've got more of that Adobe Illustrator, flat, vector-looking graphics to it. They're more stylized than they are like hand-painted or digital illustrations of each individual thing. So I would give illustrations to Everdell, but I'd actually probably give graphic design to Pandemic Legacy, especially because that passport mechanic is so cool and neat. And you have all the rules and all the other things. I mean, the graphic design is just on point on how to put all the stickers together and expand the rule book. It does all of that really well. So where does that leave us with production? You know, we have sort of illustrations, graphic design winning over here. Components are about the same. I think it really, for me, I'd have to go Everdell just because I know the amount of work that went into the illustrations. And they're impeccable and they create a world. So because of the illustrations and all the different characters and critters, I'm going to have that putting Everdell slightly over Pandemic Legacy for production. So with that, we'll move into game mechanics. And here is where I think I have sort of a strong preference. Pandemic is one of my favorite cooperative games of all time. Pandemic Legacy Season 0, I think, does the best with the sort of formula, the Legacy formula and format. I think it's the best of the Legacy series. And Season 1 was one of my all-time favorite gaming experiences ever. So the Legacy aspect and the excitement that creates, I think just blows Everdell out of the water. Everdell is a nice, serene, tranquil engine builder where you're going to make your little town of critters and pull off some combos. There's a little bit of player interaction, but not too much. And you're just going to have a serene time in this like forest world. And it's a very charming experience. But you're going to get the same type of experience game after game after game. And as strong as that experience is, sort of the law of diminishing returns, you're not going to spice this up without spending more money to insert expansions and new things into this system. Which means you're going to spend a lot more money than you do Pandemic Legacy. The Legacy format itself, after every game, is basically inserting a little bit of new things, just like you would with an expansion, into each subsequent game. More important than that, a Legacy game, in my opinion, creates absolute excitement, surprise, and joy as you're opening up those boxes, as cities are falling in Pandemic or getting taken over, switching over to communism. As those things are happening and the board is forever changing as you move forward in the campaign, that just gives it an immensely memorable and enjoyable experience. I can't speak more fondly of it. And then when you throw into the fact that Legacy Season 0 lets you create different aliases and characters as you play through, unlike the previous Pandemic Legacies where you would sort of have your one player card and add stickers to it and upgrade them as you play, you can actually get like multiple characters because your passport has different aliases and you can put different stickers on each of your aliases, which is effectively giving you multiple characters that you can switch between. It's so smart. It's so well done. I absolutely love Pandemic Legacy's gameplay. I also think the core loop and the Pandemic system, I think this one stays more true to the classic game while still spicing it up a little bit with the spy motif. But it stays much truer to that core Pandemic cooperative loop where it's like you're just one turn short of winning or you just won by the seat of your pants. It has that core loop down a lot better than Season 2 did, which mixed up too much of the base formula. Okay, so that's going to move us on to theme. And for me, I don't know if I would choose a theme here. I mean, the uniqueness of the 1960s spy thing for a Pandemic is more unique, sort of, than another like forest critter. I mean, I can think of other critter games starring like animals and critters and like their own world. So, from an originality standpoint, I think Pandemic Legacy Season 0 is a little more original with that 1960s communist, Iron Curtain versus sort of the Western world motif that it's got going on. With, of course, the backdrop being this bioweapon and virus that could potentially get out. I do find originality a little bit stronger here. And while I mentioned that the artwork in this and illustrations are absolutely gorgeous, the passport and all the graphic design and sort of vector illustrations in Pandemic Legacy are spot on with the motif, the 1960s motif it's going with. And the actual map board that you play on in this is probably one of my favorite looking boards. I think it looks very stylized and sleek. So I think for theme, and again, the legacy aspect and the story that's guiding you through it just brings you into the theme even more. As much as I love the combos of the critter in their specific house, the overall motif and storytelling done by flipping over cards and opening new boxes just lends itself even more to the theme of not trusting the right people and going after the sort of secret case or the MacGuffin. So I have to give theme to Pandemic Legacy Season 0. Just talking about it gets me excited. I want to play it again. Which brings us to replayability. And replayability, the problem with Legacy games is they do have sort of an end state and a timer on themselves. You're going to beat the campaign and there's not much you can do with your game anymore. You could sort of play it in the state you left it in with the stickers. You could try to peel the stickers off, or you could but if you really wanted to experience the game as it's meant to be played again, you need to rebuy it. Which I understand is why a lot of people hate Legacy games, because there's something finite about them and then they're over. And Everdell, if you enjoy the game, you can play it as many times as you want. I think after playing it 7 or 8 times, you're going to, if you really like it that much, you're going to start to want expansions. And as you start buying expansions, you're now in a situation where you are in a much higher price point than Pandemic Legacy and you're paying a lot more to have all that variability. But if you were to buy like the big box version of Everdell, which has like every expansion released and all the upgraded components, I think it's something like $300. You know, it's more than 3 times the cost of this game. And while I think that'll give you a ton more replayability than here, because you'll have all these different expanses you can mix and match with, I'm not sure how much more the core box. You know, this Legacy game is built to be played 12 to 24 times at max, you know, I would say. This game, you know, if you played 24 times, I think the replayability is really hitting its endpoint there. And while you technically could replay it again and again and again, the law of diminishing returns just means like you're not going to get much out of it. And I wish the base game had more variability in the strategies you would take. You know, I think the game's all about seeing the combos in the cards and going for those combos as aggressively as you can. I don't think there's a lot of other paths to victory in Everdell. It's just about hitting your combos as best you can and extending your turns. I'm not sure sort of other paths to victory other than trying to compute everything that's put out at the front and doing your best to match those goals. Pandemic Legacy Season 0, every time you open a new box and every time you play a new month, there's going to be new wrinkles to the gameplay or things that happen in your previous game that make your next game harder or easier that's going to change the way you play the game. And one of the best things about Legacy games, I think, is that they drive you to finish them. I have finished almost every Legacy game I own, the exception being Pandemic Legacy Season 2. And I'm still not quite finished this one, but I promise I will finish this one because I absolutely adore it. You know, the excitement and willingness to play and finish these Legacy games is just there. So for me, the fact that when I buy a Legacy game, I know I'm going to play it 20, 24 times just beats the average game in my collection. Everdell, obviously, as one of the final 4 games, is an exception that I've played a lot more than 3 or 4 times, but I pride myself on playing games, not having too many unplayed games in my collection, and getting rid of games after 2 or 3 plays if they just don't match or exceed other games in my collection. So, you know, Everdell is going to stay in my collection, obviously making this far, and I do love the game and have a lot of expansions that mix it up, but even with all those expansions, I don't think I have the thrill of playing it and the excitement for playing the next game as I did playing through any of the Pandemic Legacies, honestly. That thrill is just there so far for me. And even if I gave this to Everdell on a technicality on replayability, I can tell you that every tiebreaker would go to Pandemic Legacy Season 0. I absolutely have to put this one through. It's going to the finale. So with that, I'm going to say thank you so much for watching. But Pandemic Legacy Season 0 is going to go on to the final for this year. And this is the point where I remind you to like and subscribe. We only have a couple videos left. I hope you'll join me to find out my favorite game of my collection. But it may be Pandemic Legacy Season 0. It might not be. You'll have to watch and find out. But until then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.